The income tax has destroyed the concept of financial privacy. It has demolished the idea that a man's home is his castle. It has provided unlimited funding for politicians to wreck the lives and property. It has forced one-earner families to become two-earner households, leading to decreased parental supervision of children, loss of family values, and increased crime, promiscuity, and drug use. So long as the government has the power to invade our lives, rummage through our records, and take what it wants from our income, we will have only as much freedom and take-home pay as the politicians condescend to let us have. First, I have to tell you how the Word of God never ceases to amaze me. It covers every facet of life known to mankind, from how we are to live before our Creator, to how we are to treat each other, and how we are to address every situation that pertains to everyday life, and yes, even taxes. Now, before I get started here, lest one attempts to pervert my words, for the record, I'm not a tax protester. I'm simply just tired of the lack of accountability and reallocation of my tax dollars being spent where I have not delegated my representatives to disperse them. Charlie Reese was a former writer for the Orlando Sentinel in Florida for over 40 years, and when it came to his taking a last stand in confronting the establishment government, he named his last column, 545 people are responsible for the mess, but they unite in a common con. Now, keep in mind, friends, this column was originally published on February 3rd, 1984. He wrote, "Politicians are the only people in the world who create problems and then campaign against them. Have you ever wondered why, if both the unconstitutional parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are against deficits? Why do we have deficits? Have you ever wondered why, if all politicians are against inflation and high taxes? Why do we have inflation and high taxes?" I'll get to this in just a moment. You and I don't propose a federal budget, the president does. You and I don't have the constitutional authority to vote in appropriations. The House of Representatives does. You and I don't write the tax code. There isn't one, as a matter of fact. The Congress does. You and I don't set fiscal policy. The Congress does. You and I don't control monetary policy. The Federal Reserve Bank does. 100 senators, 435 congressmen, one president, and 9 unelected, might I remind you, Supreme Court justices, 545 human beings out of 325.7 million are directly, legally, morally, and individually responsible for the domestic problems that plague this country. And why? I add, because the American people tolerate it. He goes on, "I excluded the members of the Federal Reserve Bank because that problem was created by the Congress. In 1913, Congress delegated its constitutional duty to provide a sound currency to a federally chartered but private central bank. I exclude all of the special interest groups and lobbyists for a sound reason. They have no legal authority. They have no ability to coerce a senator, a congressman, or a president to do one cotton-picking thing. I don't care if they offer a politician $1 million in cash. The politician has the power to accept or to reject it. No matter what the lobbyist promises, it is the legislator's responsibility to determine how he votes. Don't you see now the con game that is being played on the people by the politicians? Those 545 human beings spend much of their energy convincing you that what they did is not their fault. They cooperate in this common con regardless of party, which again is unconstitutional. What separates a politician from a normal human being is an excessive amount of gall. No normal human being would have the gall of Tip O'Neill, who stood up and criticized Ronald Reagan for creating deficits. The president can only propose a budget. He cannot force the Congress to accept it. The Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, Article 6, Section 2, gives sole responsibility to the House of Representatives for originating appropriations and taxes. O'Neill is the Speaker of the House. He's the leader of the majority party. He and his fellow Democrats, not the president, can approve any budget that they want to. If the president vetoes it, they can pass it over his veto. Just 545 Americans have followed up this great nation with, again, the approval of the 325.7 million Americans that have failed to hold them accountable. It seems inconceivable to me that a nation of 235 million cannot replace 545 people who stand convicted by present facts of incompetence and irresponsibility. I can't think of a single domestic problem, from an unfair tax code to defense overruns, that is not traceable directly to these people. When you fully grasp the plain truth that 545 people exercise complete power over the federal government, then it must follow that what exists is what they want to exist. If the tax code is unfair, it's because they want it to be unfair. If the budget is in the red, it's because they want it in the red. If the Marines are in Lebanon, it's because they want them in Lebanon. There are no insoluble government problems. Do not let these 545 people shift the blame to bureaucrats whom they hire and whose job they can abolish, to lobbyists whose gifts and advice they can reject, to regulators to whom they give power to regulate and from whom they can take it. Above all, do not let them con you into the belief that there exists disembodied, mystical force like the economy, inflation, or politics that prevent them from doing what they take an oath to do. Those 545 people and they alone are responsible. They and they alone have the power. They and they alone should be held accountable by the people who are their bosses, provided they have the gumption to manage their own employees. Now, I mean to highlight what Charlie had written concerning taxation. Here's a partial list of taxes that Americans pay today. Now, the question I want to leave you with as I'm highlighting these taxes: did you approve of these tax appropriations? Michael Snyder wrote, air transportation taxes, biodiesel fuel taxes, building permit tax, business registration fees, capital gains tax, cigarette tax, court fines, indirect tax, disposal fees, dog license tax, driver's license fees, employer health insurance mandate tax, employer Medicare tax, employer social security tax, environmental fees, estate tax, excise taxes on comprehensive health insurance plans, federal corporate tax, federal income tax, federal unemployment tax, fishing license tax, flush taxes. Yes, this actually exists in some areas. Food and beverage license fees, franchise business taxes, garbage tax, gasoline tax, gift tax, gun owners permit, hazardous material disposable fees, highway access fees, hotel tax, license tax, import tax, individual health insurance mandate tax, inheritance taxes, insect control, hazardous materials license, inspection fee, insurance premium tax, interstate user diesel fuel tax, inventory tax, IRA early withdrawal tax, IRS interest charges, tax on top of tax, IRS penalties, tax on top of tax, library tax, license plate fees, liquor tax, local corporate tax, local income tax, local school tax, local unemployment tax, luxury tax, marriage license tax, Medicare tax surcharge on high-earning Americans under Obamacare, now American Health Care Act. Obamacare, American Health Care Act, individual mandate excise tax. If you don't buy qualifying health insurance under Obamacare, now American Health Care Act, you will have to pay an additional tax. Obamacare, now American Health Care Act, surtax on investment income, a new 3.8 surtax on investment income. Parking meters, passport fees, professional license and fees, another form of taxation, property tax, real estate tax, recreational vehicle tax, registration fees for new businesses, toll booth tax, sales tax, self-employment tax, sewer and water tax, septic permit tax, service charge tax, social security tax, special assessments for road repairs or construction, sports stadium taxes, state corporate taxes, state income tax, park entrance fees, state unemployment taxes, SUTA, tanning taxes, telephone 911 service taxes, telephone federal excise taxes, telephone federal universal service taxes, telephone minimum usage surcharge taxes, telephone state and local taxes, telephone universal access tax, the alternative minimum tax, tire recycling fees, tire tax, indirect taxation, taxes of state purchases, so on and so forth, utility taxes, vehicle registration tax, waste management tax, water rights fees tax, watercraft registration and licensing fees, well permit fees, work compensation tax, zoning permit fees. And yet, despite all of this oppressive taxation, our local governments, our state governments, and our federal government are all absolutely drowning in debt. As a matter of fact, to date, $22.0 trillion. When the federal income tax was originally introduced a little more than 100 years ago, most Americans were taxed at a rate of only 1%. Many of today's taxes were not incurred then. But once they got their feet in the door, the social planners always want more. And since that time, tax rates have gone up much higher and the tax code has exploded in size. The U.S. tax code is now 3.8 million words long. If you took all of William Shakespeare's works and collected them together, the entire collection would only be about 900,000 words long. According to the National Taxpayers Union, U.S. taxpayers spend more than 7.6 billion hours complying with federal tax requirements. Imagine what our society would look like if all that time was spent on more economically profitable activities. 75 years ago, the instructions for Form 1040 were 2 pages long. Today, they are 189 pages long. There have been 4,428 changes to the tax code just over the last decade. It is incredibly costly to change tax software, tax manuals, and tax instruction booklets for all of those changes. According to the National Taxpayers Union, the IRS currently has 1,999 different publication forms and instruction sheets that you can download from the IRS website. Our tax system has become so complicated that it is almost impossible to file your taxes correctly. For example, back in 1998, Money Magazine had 46 different tax professionals complete a tax return for a hypothetical household. All 46 of them came up with a different result. In 2009, PC World had 5 of the most popular tax preparation software websites prepare a tax return for a hypothetical household. All 5 of them came up with a different result. The IRS spends $2.45 for every 100 that it collects in taxes. According to the Tax Foundation, the average American has to work until April 17th just to pay federal tax, state, and local taxes. Back in 1900, Tax Freedom Day came on January 22nd. When the U.S. government first implemented a personal tax back in 1913, the vast majority of the population paid a rate of just 1%, and the highest marginal tax rate was just 7%. If it was up to me, I would abolish the income tax and shut down the IRS. But neither major political party in the United States, again, which is unconstitutional, we are a constitutional republic ruled by law, not by party affiliations, is even willing to consider such a thing. So the monstrous system that we have created will continue to get even bigger and even more complicated. Friends, we are literally being taxed into oblivion, and most Americans don't even seem to care. Simply put, Americans, you are paying for your own demise.